Good morning. Religion and politics. We're not supposed to discuss them in mixed company. And yet I find that they are two of the most interesting topics. And there are so many questions about both that I think it is worth talking about. And this past weekend, I wrote a post that got a lot of attention. And it was a question I had about when people are, and we get this on Facebook all the time, we need your prayers. Please send prayers. Someone's going through something. Let's do a prayer circle and we want prayers. And then when someone is healed or things turn out really well, people say, well, thank Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Thank God. And I kind of said, well, what about the doctors and the hospitals that actually cured the person? Don't they get any thanks? And I got some interesting comments about this. And one of them I have to share with you. It's from a viewer named Dave. And he made this really cool comment where he said, I'm not smart enough to be a doctor, but I'm glad I'm not one. Because it seems like the doctors get all the blame if something goes wrong, but they get none of the gratitude if things go right. And that's it's kind of the reverse with God. God is supposed to get all the credit when things go right, but you don't dare blame him when things go wrong, because that's blasphemous. That's a sin. And it is kind of an interesting concept that I've dealt with for many years. And then I had tagged a really dear friend of this show, and you know him. He's the singing chaplain. He's amazing, Chris Adams. And some of his friends actually said, why were you tagged in this? This woman is sacrilegious. No. And Chris wrote me a lovely letter, and his friends got to see it. And his letter is on my timeline, if you would like to read it. It's really good. And he understood why I tagged him in this post, because I have real questions. And Chris did this eloquent writing about the difference between faith and religion. And they are two very different things. Okay? And that's what I would like to discuss today. And I want to put a caveat on this show, and of course all my shows. Please be respectful to one another. My name is on this show. I'm the one who pushes the buttons. Okay? I get it. People do attack me sometimes, and that's okay to a point. But please don't attack the brave people who have the courage to come on this show and comment and help to answer the questions I ask and to educate me, and also to share their opinions and their differences with all of you, because that's what makes us great. And that's why I do this show. So it's great to disagree. It's great to have an intellectual debate, but please be respectful while doing it. So thank you. Now let's get started. So faith versus religion. Now you guys have heard me talk a lot. And believe me, it sounds like I pick on certain religions. But that's only because that's what I grew up knowing. Okay? The difference between religion and faith is something that you have inside you. You have faith that no matter how bad things get, they will get better and you will get through it. And if praying makes you believe that that will help you get through, then that's amazing. I so admire people who truly have faith. But we also have agendas because we're human. And there are priests and ministers and certain religions that have agendas that have nothing to do with the Bible, have nothing to do with Jesus, have nothing to do with faith. Okay, and we're going to talk about that. There are some religions, and again, they are out there religions. They're not anyone that we know. Catholics or Greek Orthodox or Jewish. Most people don't believe this, but there are some religions that will actually tell a parent that if their child needs their tonsils out, they dare not see a surgeon. They need to pray. And if their child dies, they didn't pray hard enough. There are certain religious sects that tell their parishioners not to vaccinate their children for chickenpox, measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, the flu. I don't know that any part of the Bible ever said that you're not allowed to get healing if you need healing. Did they not have doctors in biblical times? I don't remember. I mean, I'm sure they did. But we can't just pray and expect strep throat to be healed. You need antibiotics for that. Your appendix is not going to heal itself if it needs to come out. And I don't care what religion you belong to. Your religion, your church, should never come before your child and their life and their health. And this is kind of going to be a theme in this show. Because I grew up in a religion where the priest became God, became all controlling. My grandmother used to constantly threaten me and my mother if we did something that pissed her off. 2 things I heard as a child. This is my house. I can kick you and your mother out in the street, which of course she couldn't because she needed my mother's income to live, to keep this house. And I'm calling Father Veronis. I'm calling the Greek priest. I was like 11 years old and I said, you know what? Call him. What do I care? He's not my father. See, I have a father. His name's George W. Kling. And I'm not allowed to see him because you won't let me. You tried to poison me against my actual biological father. But Father Alexander Veronis is not my father, and you can go ahead and call him, because what is he going to do? And kind of that shut her up a little bit. That a 12-year-old knew that the priest didn't have any say over me. I heard a story that many religions, they have the priest come over to bless the house. If you move to a new house, you saw Amityville Horror, they asked the priest to come and bless the house. I heard a story, and I gotta keep the viewer's name private, that when the priest came to bless this person's house, he blessed the house and then he sat there and he started interrogating this person about family gossip. Oh, I heard your father-in-law has a gambling problem. Is your brother cheating on his wife? What is that about? This is none of that priest's business. But he wanted to get dirt on the family, probably to use later. See, that's not faith, people, and that's not a good priest. That is a priest that wants to get dirt on his parishioners to use at a later time, to know where all the bodies are buried, to control you. Something that Chris Adams wrote to me that was interesting is that, look, we are given free will, but there are some religions that want you to park your free will at the church doors. They don't want you to have free will. Another viewer wrote that she goes to church because she wants to have the Bible explained to her. And that's awesome, because the Bible is hard to get through. It's hard to understand what everything means because of the way some of it is written. But you got to make sure that the person that's doing the interpreting of the Bible is actually doing it properly. Because if I read a passage in the Bible and you read a passage in the Bible, we're going to see it 2 different ways. Because we're coming in from 2 different mindsets. Now, we pay these priests and pastors and ministers to interpret the Bible for us, but we have to never forget that they're human beings. And they also have their own agendas. So they could be interpreting the Bible the way they want us to see it instead of the way it actually was meant to be interpreted. Lots of religions constantly talk about money. Money, 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 money. Now I'm talking religion. Churches. The buildings. The stained glass windows. I remember sermons from my childhood, and I don't remember ever hearing a sermon about the actual Bible, unless it had to do with money and tithing and giving more to the Lord than you give to anybody else. But see, that's not exactly the way it was when Jesus was out there in the world. Jesus, the young boy, went to the temple and he lost his mind when he saw people buying and selling goods in the temple. He threw over the tables. He said, "How dare you conduct business in my Father's house? You don't do business in my Father's house." When Judas was starting to collect money from the faithful who came to hear the disciples preach the word of Jesus, Jesus threw the money in the river. Nobody pays to hear the word of my Father. Nobody pays. And yet many churches today, it's all about paying. There are churches that if you don't pay your dues, they won't baptize your child. They won't let you get married. They won't bury you until you settle your debt with the church. And yet Jesus, at least in my interpretation of what Jesus said, was you have no debt to the church. Not to the church. Okay? Remember that. Remember that. Remember that I've told you that my mother was disavowed of all her rights in the Greek church because she refused to get married in the Greek church for several reasons. That is a man-made rule that makes absolutely no sense. It is not in the Bible. And it is a draconian, antiquated law because today we have young people, destination weddings, people getting married in Jamaica, in Aruba, in the Virgin Islands. They're getting married in Las Vegas. Why does it matter where you got married as long as you're legally married? Well, in the Greek church, it's $600 difference because they charge $600. At least that was the price a couple years ago to get married. And they want that money. They want that money. And boy, I'll tell you, the one priest, he wanted that confession they make you do before you get married. Wanted to hear all the dirt because unlike Catholic confessions, Greek confessions are face-to-face, fascia fascia. The priest knows who you are, and he's hearing your confession, and he's writing it all down for future use. It's not right. And when my mother wanted to get married in the Greek church, there was a ceremony they could do to preserve her rights, and my stepfather said, "Yeah, we'll do it." Until the Greek priest said, "Well, we do a wine thing where you have to each drink out of a cup of wine." And my stepfather said, "I'm not doing that." Can we substitute grape juice? No. It's just a sip of wine. It's blessed. It's not going to hurt you. Well, see, unknown to this priest, because it was none of his business, my stepfather was 40 years sober. He's a recovered alcoholic, and there was no way he was drinking alcohol. Because whatever the Greeks believe, that wine is wine. It's alcohol. And he wasn't going to do it. And he certainly wasn't going to tell Alexander Voronezh why he wasn't going to do it, because it was none of his business. And that's when my mother stood up and said, "You know what, we're done here. I don't care anymore. I'm done. This is not anything that has to do with my faith. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. I don't believe in the Greek church anymore. And I'm not going to put the church before my husband." And by the way, he is my legal husband, even if you don't acknowledge that. And then my stepfather stood up and said, "You know what, Alex, don't worry. She can take communion in my church, no questions asked." Holding the body and blood of Jesus Christ as a reward if you do what they say, and as a punishment if you don't, is not the job of a priest, of another human being. That is between you, who feels the need to take communion, and your God. It is not between you and this priest, this other human being, who forgot that he's not God. When my stepfather died, Father Alexander Voronezh went to my mother's home and said, "Well, I have good news. I'm really sorry your husband's dead, but there's good news. Now that he's dead, you can come back to church and I'll give you communion." My mother told him to get the hell out of her house. So proud of my mom for doing that. Get the hell out of my house. I am mourning my husband, and you're giving me the good news that now you'll give me communion, which I always had the right to receive. Get out. Good for my mom. This is what we're talking about. There are people in churches that, because of what the priest preaches from the pulpit that has nothing to do with the Bible, their kid gets into trouble, or their kid lives a different lifestyle than they would prefer. And they're embarrassed. They will disavow their own children. And then they'll be complaining, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed to go to church. How am I going to face all my Greek friends, all my Catholic friends? Oh my God. They put their church before their children. That's wrong. No church should come before your children, because that has nothing to do with the Bible, and it has nothing to do with faith. Look at all the children that went astray in the Bible that were forgiven by their fathers and mothers. And yet church comes before your own children, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your niece, your own parents. Because you got to make sure you can go to church on Sunday and hold your head up. Why? Going to church isn't what makes you a Christian. Living like a good person, that makes you a good person. I have atheist and agnostic friends and Wiccan friends and Muslim friends and Jewish friends that I was taught in the church I grew up in I shouldn't associate with. Certainly shouldn't marry any of them. And they are wonderful people. So what's the big deal? What is the big deal? Faith comes in all shapes and sizes. My Jewish friends have no less faith than my Christian friends do. And my atheist and agnostic friends, well, they have faith in themselves. They have faith in the responsibility they have to take care of their families. And they are good, hardworking, lovely people who give money to charity and are kind. Who am I to say they're wrong? Really? Really? There was another interesting post from someone who said it is funny how these people who, when they get diagnosed with a serious illness and they are facing the thought that they may actually die, all of a sudden they don't want to so much. And yet they keep saying that they can't wait for the day that they meet their maker, that they go to heaven and they are reunited with their loved ones who passed before them. Now look, don't put your thumbs on me on this one. A viewer wrote this. And I've asked the question politically incorrectly, I guess, in my own mind. But it always seems funny that those who claim to have the most faith seem to also be the ones that ask for the most prayers because they don't want to die. And yet, almost everything you hear in some of these organized religions is that this right here is hell on earth. This is the suffering, and that we should be looking forward to our death when we suffer no more, and there's a mansion in heaven with our name on it. Why doesn't anyone want to move in? I know, incorrect, not trying to be disrespectful, but it seems to be that those who claim they are the most religious, the most faithful, they go to church every Sunday, are the ones who really, really want prayers and will spend thousands of dollars to get well. Because, well, when I said I'm looking forward to meeting Jesus, I didn't mean today. You know, later, another time, not today. Got to think about that. You got to think about it. We have human beings treating other human beings with such disregard. There is a couple right now who the Supreme Court is going to hear their case because somebody refused to make them a wedding cake. because they are a same-sex couple. This person said it's against his religion to do so, but the bottom line is this person's business is open to the public, and these two lovely men are the public. And again, religion, not faith. This man is putting his church and his religion before his customers, fellow human beings, and all they want him to do is bake a freaking cake. They don't want him to come to the wedding. They don't want him to bless the wedding. They're not asking him for a gift. They want to pay him to do his bloody job. And he refused because he doesn't approve of their lifestyle. And who the hell died and named him boss? Named him God? That he has the right to refuse to do his job because he doesn't like the people who are going to pay him to do it. Then what he should do is put a sign up on his bakery and say, I'm open to only the Christian public, to those who live the lifestyle I approve of. He needs to post that and see how long he stays in business. This is where I get so angry. I get so angry when the Catholic Church says, if you use birth control, you're committing a sin. If you use a condom to protect yourself from STDs and unwanted pregnancy, you're committing a sin. Where does it say that in the Bible? Believe me, I looked. And I asked a pastor at a church that I attended for a little bit a few years ago, and it's not there. So don't even bother going through the thousands of pages. It's not there. There is nothing that says birth control, not abortion, birth control is against God's law. Nothing. Shellfish and lobster is. How many of you are giving that up for Lent? Or forever? See, that's in the Bible. Most of you don't know about it. Because there's another part of that chapter, Leviticus, right above the shellfish stuff, and it talks about man shall not lay down with man as he does with woman. Everybody loves that one, but they didn't keep reading. That's the problem. They read this much of Leviticus, and they forgot the part about the shellfish being filthy and an abomination unto the Lord. Wow. Anyone have shrimp cocktail for dinner last night? Anyone having lobster over the holidays? There's going to be a lot of shrimp being eaten by a lot of people celebrating Christmas and Jesus' birthday. Jesus wasn't a fan of shellfish. So once again, interpretation. Who is interpreting this and how do we interpretate it? Maybe back then shellfish wasn't properly cleaned and a lot of people got sick from eating it. Today we know better. Most people don't get sick from eating shellfish. Maybe that was the interpretation of that passage. And maybe the passage about man lying down with man as he does with woman meant something completely different back then. But we do know that when man lies with man, it's different than when he lies with woman. So, again, interpretation. Look, the mantra of this show is love shows and grows. And I don't mean to disrespect anybody. I really don't. But when I ask a question, I'm actually asking because I want to know. I mean, if you believe the world was created in 7 days and there was Adam and Eve and they were told to go forth and procreate, where did their sons' wives come from? Questions, you know? Questions. Obviously, we're not all ancestrally related. So obviously, at some point, there were other people on earth other than Adam and Eve. I've always had a question about that. And what I was always told was that's just the way it is. That's what we believe. Well, it's not what I believe. I'm sorry, I believe in evolution. And if I had children, I would certainly want them to be taught evolution in public schools. So again, interpretation. And look, I love Chris Adams more than anything in the world. I think he is a wonderful pastor. And I wish growing up I would have had a spiritual advisor like him to guide me in my youth when I was being forced to go to a church where I absolutely learned nothing except that I should feel superior because I'm Greek and give money. That's what I got out of church. 18 years of going to church every Sunday. Oh, except in the summer when Mom actually took off. We took off in the summer. It shows how, I guess, passionate a lot of people took off church when Sunday school let out in June. We didn't go to church again until September. Again, vacations were more important than church. So that tells you something too about these people who think that they are somehow better than anyone else because they go to church every Sunday from September to June. And they send their kids to Sunday school, and they send them to Greek school and catechism classes in the Catholic Church. And they give money, and they pay money, and they buy a pew, or they pay for a memorial mass or something. Is that really what Jesus wants of us? If you do believe in Jesus? No. The whole point of religion in general, not religion, I'm sorry, faith, is that you are supposed to treat others as you want to be treated. The golden rule. And that is not a religious verse. That's a human verse. An atheist wants to be treated the way he treats others. An agnostic also. A Muslim would like to be treated with human decency as he treats others. It's human. And humans need to come before a religion, before a building. And I may continue this show. It's going a little long. And I know that some of you don't have the time to watch a long show on a weekday. But I may continue this because there were some other things I wanted to touch on that I simply don't have the time to. But I do believe that we need to draw our line between religion and faith and understand that religion is something that is manufactured by man. It has nothing to do with God. Any God. It is a bunch of old men getting together and saying, how can we control our parishioners? How can we get the most money out of them? How can we control them? I'll leave you with a last story. A priest, again, in the Greek church, not Veronis, by the way, this time, told an old Greek granny, an old Greek yaya, that when she watched her favorite television show, the devil was sitting on her shoulder. And the old lady was so upset. She thought she was going to hell. And her children went to the church, went to the yard and said, are you kidding me? This poor old 80-year-old woman gets joy out of watching a television show once a week. And the priest tells her the devil is sitting on her shoulder. She's committing a sin for watching it. Again, interpretation. The wrong person with their own agenda trying to control their parishioners. We have to be very vigilant of that. God is not going to plant a money tree in your backyard if you buy a house you can't afford. You cannot use your faith or your religion to get out of personal responsibility. It doesn't happen. And if you are one of these lucky people that you said, oh Lord, I can't afford my mortgage, can you please send me a money tree? And he did, please take a picture. I'd love to see it. Please. Bet you don't have one because it didn't happen. Having faith that God will take care of you when you refuse to take care of yourself probably isn't going to work out so well for you. Because that's in the Bible too. That you must work if you are able to. You must contribute in order to eat. That's my show for today. It is going to be 30 minutes. I apologize if it gets a little long, but please take the time to watch it. And I can't wait to hear the comments. For now, love shows and grows. Remember that. And faith is something to be admired. Religion is something to be questioned and be a little weary of or leery of. Because they all have their own agendas that may not adhere to yours, but will take advantage of your faith. Political Paula, out.